The Fox and Razor, two names that sent chills through Liverpool's streets, were more than rival gang leaders. They were the architects of a brutal war that would flood the city's roads with blood and forever change its darkest underworld. Liverpool has always been a city of contrasts. Its vibrant streets and rich history attract visitors from around the world. But beneath this lively surface lies a darker reality. For decades, pockets of the city have been plagued by crime, but in recent years, a new and more dangerous problem has taken hold. Violent gang wars that tear through neighborhoods like wildfire. The root of this conflict lies in the battle for control over the drug trade, a ruthless and deadly industry that promises quick money but demands a heavy price. These gangs are not just groups of young men looking for trouble, they are organized networks, deeply embedded in the city's fabric. They control entire streets, deciding who can sell drugs and where. The gangs have their own rules, their own loyalties, and their own brutal methods of maintaining power. Their influence reaches far beyond the streets, affecting families, schools, and businesses. For many residents, living in these areas means constantly looking over their shoulders, fearing violence at any moment. The origins of the current turf wars can be traced back to a few years ago when demand for drugs surged in Liverpool. What started as small-scale dealing quickly evolved into a highly competitive and dangerous business. Rival groups began fighting for dominance, and soon, the competition turned violent. The once peaceful neighborhoods became battlegrounds, with gunshots echoing through the night and lives shattered by the fallout. Local authorities struggled to keep up. Police patrols increased, but the gangs adapted quickly, using intimidation and secrecy to stay one step ahead. The community grew divided. Some were too afraid to speak out, while others felt trapped, caught between loyalty to their neighborhoods and the threat of gang violence. This invisible war was not just a fight for drugs, it was a fight for survival, respect, and control. As this violent underworld expanded, so did its impact. Schools saw more absenteeism and trouble. Businesses shuttered their doors, and families lived in constant fear. The gang wars became a grim reality, a shadow looming over the city. Liverpool was no longer just known for its culture and history. It had become a city marked by blood on its roads. The Red Lions emerged as one of the most feared and powerful gangs in Liverpool's criminal landscape. Their story began in the north end of the city, where economic struggles and social challenges created an environment ripe for gangs to take root. The Red Lions capitalized on this, recruiting young men from the area who saw few opportunities elsewhere. What set the Red Lions apart wasn't just their size or their willingness to use violence, it was their strategic approach to building power. At the heart of the Red Lions was their leader, a figure known only as the Fox. Unlike many gang leaders who ruled through sheer brutality alone, the Fox was known for his sharp mind and careful planning. He understood that controlling territory meant more than just force. It required intelligence, loyalty, and the ability to manage complex networks. Under his leadership, the Red Lions grew from a small local crew into a well-organized force that controlled key drug routes throughout the city. The gang's influence stretched far beyond the streets. They invested in securing loyal drug dealers, informants, and even some local businesses that helped launder money. Their operations were surprisingly sophisticated, with communication methods designed to avoid police detection and systems in place to protect their leaders from direct exposure. This organization made them a tough target for law enforcement and rival gangs alike. The Red Lions also maintained a strict code within their ranks. Loyalty was demanded and rewarded, but betrayal was met with swift and often brutal punishment. This helped the gang maintain discipline and ensured that members stayed committed, even as violence escalated around them. The gang was not just a group of criminals. It was a tightly knit community bound by shared goals and survival instincts. The Fox's ability to stay one step ahead made the Red Lions the dominant force in Liverpool's north side. Their success attracted attention and envy from rival groups who wanted to take over their lucrative drug territories. What started as a quest for control would soon ignite a violent clash with the Black Ravens, a gang from the city's south side. This rivalry would soon engulf Liverpool in a battle for power that no one could ignore. The Red Lions' rise marked the beginning of a brutal chapter in Liverpool's criminal history. Opposite the Red Lions, rising from the south side of Liverpool, was the Black Ravens, a gang known for their fierce aggression and unrelenting pursuit of power. While the Red Lions relied on strategy and careful planning, the Black Ravens thrived on intimidation and violence. Their reputation for brutality was well known, making them feared across the city. Unlike the Red Lions, who built their empire through calculated moves, the Black Ravens believed in striking fast and hard to claim what they wanted. The Black Ravens had a stronghold in the poorer neighborhoods of South Liverpool, where opportunities were scarce and frustration ran high. Like many gangs, they recruited heavily from local youth, promising protection, money, and a sense of belonging that was otherwise hard to find. For many young people, joining the Ravens was seen as a way out of poverty and a chance to gain respect. This created a deep-rooted loyalty among members, even as violence escalated around them. What set the Black Ravens apart was their willingness to use extreme violence to achieve their goals. Shootings, stabbings, and brutal beatings were common tactics to intimidate rival gangs and anyone who stood in their way. Their members often acted without hesitation, fueling a cycle of retaliation that pushed Liverpool's streets to the brink of chaos. The gang's notoriety grew quickly, making it clear that they were determined to challenge the dominance of the Red Lions. Despite their violent reputation, the Black Ravens also had a shrewd side. They knew how to manipulate fear to maintain control and influence within their territories. The gang used a mix of intimidation and community connections to keep people in line. Local businesses were often forced to pay protection money, and residents learned to avoid any involvement that could provoke the gang's wrath. This atmosphere of fear kept the Ravens firmly in control of their area. As the Black Ravens expanded their drug operations, they increasingly encroached on Red Lions' territory, sparking clashes that quickly spiraled out of control. What began as isolated incidents soon grew into open warfare, with both gangs fighting fiercely for control of Liverpool's lucrative drug trade. The stage was set for a brutal conflict that would change the city forever. The Black Ravens' rise challenged the established order and ignited a violent struggle that no one could escape. The battle for control over Liverpool's drug trade soon exploded into full-scale turf wars, turning streets and neighborhoods into violent battlegrounds. What began as rivalry over drug routes quickly escalated as the Red Lions and Black Ravens fought fiercely to protect and expand their territories. The conflict spread beyond back alleys and quiet corners to the heart of communities where innocent people lived their daily lives. The violence was brutal and unpredictable. Gunshots shattered the calm of city nights, often echoing through residential areas where families were forced to take cover. Shootings became disturbingly common, with both gangs using firearms to send messages and eliminate rivals. Stabbings and assaults added to the rising toll of injuries and fear. These weren't random acts. They were calculated attacks designed to weaken the opposition and assert dominance over contested streets. As the turf wars raged, no place felt safe. Streets once bustling with everyday life became deserted after dark. Shops closed early or boarded up completely, afraid of becoming targets or collateral damage. Schools reported an increase in absenteeism and trouble among students who were either drawn into gang activity or terrified by the violence nearby. Public transport routes were changed, and community centers saw fewer visitors. The gang's battle left scars far beyond their own ranks. Local residents found themselves trapped in the crossfire. Families mourned lost loved ones, and many were displaced, moving away in search of safety. The sense of community that once bound neighborhoods together began to fray under the pressure of fear and mistrust. People hesitated to report crimes, fearing retaliation from gangs. This silence allowed the violence to continue unchecked, creating a cycle of fear and retaliation that was hard to break. Authorities struggled to respond effectively. Police increased patrols and launched raids, but the gangs' knowledge of their own territories gave them the upper hand. The violence continued to escalate, with each attack provoking a deadly response. What started as a fight over drug turf had become a war on Liverpool's streets, a war that devastated communities and left a lasting impact on the city's social fabric. The blood on the roads was only the beginning of a crisis that Liverpool would feel for years to come. The ongoing gang wars left deep wounds on Liverpool's communities, far beyond the visible damage of shattered windows and burned-out cars. The violence seeped into everyday life, changing how people lived, worked, and hoped for the future. Families were often the first to bear the cost, with many losing loved ones to senseless attacks or being forced to live in constant fear of the next outbreak of violence. Funerals became far too common, and the pain of loss echoed through neighborhoods that once felt safe and close-knit. Children and teenagers faced a particularly harsh reality. Schools in gang-controlled areas struggled to provide a stable environment. Many students stopped attending classes, either because they were scared to leave their homes or because they were drawn into the gangs themselves. The promise of quick money and power tempted some young people, while others felt trapped by the violence surrounding them. Education suffered, and with it the hopes for a better future in these neighborhoods. Businesses also suffered greatly during the turf wars. Many local shops and pubs were forced to close due to threats or damage from gang violence. Those that stayed open often had to pay protection money to avoid attacks or vandalism, adding financial strain to already struggling owners. With fewer places to gather and shop safely, the sense of community weakened, and economic opportunities dried up. The mental toll on residents was enormous. Fear became a daily companion, and many suffered from anxiety and trauma caused by the violence. Community events and public gatherings became rare, as people were reluctant to come together in areas controlled by gangs. This isolation only deepened the divide between different parts of the city and between neighbors. Despite the fear, many residents tried to resist the gangs' influence. Local groups and community leaders worked tirelessly to support victims, offer alternatives for young people, and rebuild trust, but their efforts often felt overwhelmed by the scale of the violence and the grip gangs had on the streets. Liverpool's gang wars were more than just fights over drug territory. They were battles that tore apart the social fabric of entire communities, leaving lasting scars that would take years, if not decades, to heal. The city was caught in a dangerous cycle of violence that threatened the future of its people. The gang wars in Liverpool took a dramatic and unexpected turn when a shocking betrayal shook the foundation of the Red Lions. A trusted high-ranking member, someone deeply embedded in the gang's operations, secretly began working with the rival Black Ravens. This double agent provided critical information about Red Lion's plans, movements, and weaknesses, giving the Black Ravens a dangerous advantage. The betrayal was not just a loss of intelligence, it was a deep blow to the gang's trust and unity. The ambush that followed was devastating. The Black Ravens, armed with inside knowledge, launched a coordinated attack that caught the Red Lions off guard. Several key members were injured or arrested, and the gang's grip on parts of the north side began to weaken. The fallout from this attack sent shockwaves throughout Liverpool's criminal underworld. Members of both gangs grew paranoid, unsure who could be trusted, and fear of further betrayals spread quickly. This betrayal forced a reorganization within the Red Lions. Leaders scrambled to identify the mole and restore discipline. At the same time, the Black Ravens tried to capitalize on their advantage, pushing deeper into Red Lions' territory. The once clear lines between enemy groups blurred as some members switched sides, seeking better protection or more power. Loyalties became fragile, and alliances shifted unpredictably. The double cross exposed the fragile nature of gang loyalty and power. What had seemed like strong brotherhoods were revealed to be vulnerable to greed, fear, and ambition. The betrayal intensified the violence, as both gangs sought to punish traitors and prevent future leaks. This only increased the danger for members and innocent residents caught in the escalating conflict. Meanwhile, law enforcement and community leaders took notice of the internal chaos. They saw an opportunity to intervene, hoping the gang's divisions could be exploited to bring the violence under control. But the gang's battles were far from over. The betrayals, shifts in power, and growing mistrust created a more dangerous and unpredictable landscape of control. The police launched an aggressive crackdown in an effort to restore order. The scale and intensity of the turf wars had reached a point where the city could no longer ignore the growing bloodshed and fear gripping its streets. Law enforcement increased patrols, carried out undercover operations, and coordinated raids targeting gang leaders and key members. The crackdown was one of the most significant in the city's recent history, aiming to dismantle the powerful networks controlling the drug trade. Undercover officers risked their lives infiltrating gangs, gathering intelligence that revealed drug routes, safe houses, and weapons caches. These efforts led to a series of arrests that shook the gangs, disrupting their operations and forcing leaders to go into hiding. The police also collaborated with other agencies, sharing information and resources to ensure a coordinated response to the violence. Public support for the crackdown was high, with many hoping this would finally bring peace to neighborhoods torn apart by the conflict. However, the gangs proved to be remarkably resilient and adaptable. They quickly changed their methods to evade police detection, using encrypted messaging apps, shifting drug routes and recruiting new members to replace those arrested. Violence continued, often becoming more unpredictable as desperate gangs fought to hold onto their territories. Some gang members became more cautious, avoiding large gatherings or moving in smaller groups, making it harder for police to target them. Despite the arrests and raids, the crackdown revealed the limits of law enforcement's ability to solve deep-rooted social problems through force alone. Many communities remained fearful, and some residents distrusted the police, feeling caught between gangs and authorities. The cycle of violence continued, with new leaders emerging to fill the void left by those taken down. The battle between police and gangs became a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, with each side trying to outsmart the other. While the crackdown dealt significant blows to the gangs, it did not end the conflict. Instead, it pushed the war deeper underground, making it harder to track and control. Liverpool's fight against gang violence was far from over, and the city faced a long road ahead in reclaiming its streets and restoring safety to its people. As investigations into Liverpool's gang wars deepened, a startling truth began to emerge. The violence tearing through the city was not only the result of street-level rivalries, but was being manipulated by hidden figures operating far from the front lines. These puppet masters were older, more experienced crime bosses who used the gangs as tools to fight their battles and maintain control over the lucrative drug trade. Unlike the street gangs, they stayed in the shadows, avoiding direct exposure to law enforcement and violence. These hidden leaders had long established criminal networks that extended beyond Liverpool, connecting to larger drug trafficking operations across the UK and Europe. By controlling the gangs, they ensured a steady flow of drugs into the city, while eliminating competition through violent turf wars. This arrangement allowed them to profit enormously while letting others take the risks and face the consequences of street-level violence. The puppet masters played their pieces carefully. They fueled the rivalry between the Red Lions and Black Ravens, encouraging conflicts that weakened both sides and prevented either from becoming too powerful. This ongoing struggle benefited the crime bosses by keeping the gangs dependent on their leadership and resources. The gangs became pawns in a dangerous game, manipulated to protect the interests of those far above them. Law enforcement officials were stunned by the complexity of these hidden networks. While police had been focused on arresting gang members and disrupting street-level activity, the real power lay elsewhere. The deeper investigation revealed money laundering schemes, corrupt officials, and secretive meetings that tied the gang wars to a broader, more organized criminal enterprise. For the people of Liverpool, this revelation was a bitter pill to swallow. The violence they saw on the streets was just the surface of a much larger and more sinister system. It became clear that breaking the cycle of gang wars required dismantling not only the gangs themselves, but also the powerful figures who pulled the strings from behind the scenes. This discovery marked a turning point in the fight against Liverpool's gang violence. It shifted the focus toward uncovering and exposing the hidden puppet masters, whose greed and cruelty had fueled years of bloodshed and suffering. The battle for control was no longer just between gangs. It was a fight against a hidden empire built on fear, manipulation, and crime. After years of relentless violence and bloodshed, a fragile truce finally began to take shape between the Red Lions and the Black Ravens. The constant fighting had taken a heavy toll on both gangs. Members were lost, resources drained, and the streets of Liverpool became increasingly hostile to their operations. Exhausted by the endless cycle of retaliation and pressure from police and the community, leaders on both sides reluctantly agreed to a ceasefire. This uneasy peace was fragile, held together by a mix of fear, fatigue, and the hope that further violence could be avoided. The truce did not mean the gangs disappeared or stopped their illegal activities. Instead, it was more like a temporary pause, with each side carefully watching the other, ready to respond at the slightest sign of betrayal. Suspicion lingered everywhere, and old wounds remained fresh. For many, the peace was a relief, but it was clear that trust had been shattered beyond repair. Communities across Liverpool began to breathe a little easier, but the damage left behind was immense. Neighborhoods that had been battlegrounds were scarred by years of violence, with broken families, shuttered businesses, and ongoing fear. Many residents struggled to rebuild their lives, unsure if the truce would hold or if another wave of violence was just around the corner. The wounds ran deep, affecting mental health, social cohesion, and economic opportunities. During this time, community leaders, charities, and local organizations stepped up their efforts to heal the city. Programs aimed at preventing young people from joining gangs gained momentum, offering education, job training, and safe spaces. Former gang members began speaking out, sharing their stories to warn others about the dangers of gang life. These efforts were small but hopeful signs that Liverpool might one day escape the shadow of its violent past. Still, the truce was delicate and dependent on continued vigilance. The gangs remained powerful forces in the city, and the threat of a return to violence was ever present. Liverpool's future depended on breaking the cycle, rebuilding trust, and creating opportunities that could pull communities away from the grip of gangs. The battle for peace was only beginning, and the road ahead would be long and uncertain. Liverpool's journey toward recovery after years of gang wars has been slow and challenging. The scars left by the violence run deep, but the city's spirit has shown resilience. Community leaders, former gang members, and local organizations have come together to tackle the root causes of crime and violence. Their work focuses on providing support to those affected, creating opportunities for young people, and rebuilding neighborhoods torn apart by years of conflict. One of the key efforts has been to offer alternatives to gang life. Programs designed to engage youth through education, sports, and job training have provided a path away from crime. These initiatives aim to break the cycle that traps many young people, showing them that a different future is possible. Former gang members often play a vital role in these efforts, sharing their experiences to discourage others from making the same choices and helping build trust within communities. Local authorities have also worked to improve safety by increasing police presence in vulnerable areas and encouraging cooperation between law enforcement and residents. This partnership aims to restore confidence in the police, who were once seen with suspicion or fear. While challenges remain, small victories have encouraged more people to come forward with information, helping to disrupt remaining criminal activity. At the same time, the city is working to repair its image. Liverpool is more than the violence that once gripped its streets. Efforts to promote culture, tourism, and community pride have helped remind people of the city's rich history and vibrant spirit. Slowly but surely, neighborhoods damaged by the gang wars are rebuilding, with new businesses opening and public spaces becoming safer. Despite these positive steps, the threat of gang violence has not disappeared completely. The gangs still exist, and the forces that fueled their rise remain present in some areas. The work to keep Liverpool safe is ongoing, requiring constant attention and cooperation from all parts of society. Liverpool's story is one of struggle but also of hope. It is a reminder that even in the darkest times, communities can come together to heal, rebuild, and create a better future. The battle against gang violence